What's up, everybody? Welcome back once again to another episode of Axel's Analysis. As always, I'm the man too cheap to make up his own name, so that's still on Axel Mulligan. Brilliant NXT TakeOver on Thursday night. Absolutely fantastic. Just top to bottom on the card. Everything flowed perfectly. It worked perfectly storyline-wise and for the live crowd as well. If you're not talking storyline, it was a great wrestling show, and I would put it in my top 5 shows of the year for any company that I've seen. Really, it's just a fantastic show all round. Commentary team, as you'd expect, it was Philip Saxton and Renee Young. Renee's working really well with these two. I can't fault her. I've given her a lot of shite in the past for how bad she was working with Rich Brennan, and whether it was Alex Riley or Jason Albert, because maybe the chemistry just wasn't there. But whatever has sort of changed in that, working with Saxon and Tom Phillips, fair play to her. She's doing really well. My hat goes off to her, and I'll hold my hands up and say, now, Renee Young, you've proven me wrong. The NXT Tag Team Championship match was up first between KalistiCara and the Ascension. It was a really enjoyable match, and it's a shame that over the last year it's just been a really dull, boring reign from the Ascension, really. And it just shows what could have happened over the last year, because everything in this match just worked perfectly. There wasn't any of this, let's seek and destroy one man, knock his opponent off the apron, and hit the fall of man to win. It wasn't like that at all. It was a really well worked match, and I was glad to see it, to be honest with you, because the Ascension, to be fair to them, are decent wrestlers, good workers. The ending of the match came about when Victor hit an STO to Kalisto. Connor came in from the outside. They'd all got knocked down by Hunakara like a couple of minutes before. He dived through the ropes and hit a double clothesline. That was sweet as fuck. Connor slid into the ring. They're looking to hit the fall of man, and I'm there thinking, fucking hell, here we go. Hunakara got up onto the apron and he grabbed the foot of Connor, and as Connor looked round to get him off, Hunakara hit a flying kick to the side of Connor's face, knocked him out of the ring, and Hunakara climbed up onto the apron. Rick Victor knocked him off, and Kalisto ran at Victor to hit him with a roll up, or to catch him with a roll up. Victor held on to the ropes. He turned round. He went to hit Kalisto with a clothesline. Kalisto countered it into the Salida del Sol. 1, 2, 3. And finally, we have new tag team champions. And the year of oppression from the Ascension is finally over. And I couldn't be any happier, because, as I've said before, the reign was boring. It was booked badly. There's no tag teams in the division. They're working on that now. They've got new tag teams. A new tag team, or the newest tag team, is the new tag team champions. And two guys that I think that are going to work brilliantly together. They've got, they're obviously both Mexicans. Got new entrance music as well, actually. I forgot to mention that just now. But, they work brilliantly together. They've tagged, 5 times now? 5 times, and they've got that chemistry there. They don't work together at the live events either, which makes it even more impressive. Kalisto, by all accounts, works with Solomon Crow. Obviously, Hunakara is on the main roster, but having him working with Kalisto is just going to work brilliantly for this team. And then when they do eventually come up onto the main roster, look out, because they're going to be just really exciting to watch. I can't wait for it. The time when the time comes for them to come up to the main roster. I said it countless times. Kalisto is going to be the next Rey Mysterio. Hunakara, unfortunately, isn't going to be as big as what he should have been, or the Sin Cara gimmick should have been, because of Mr. Cara. Obviously, with all the botching and sloppiness and the injuries, etc. But no, fair play to him. New tag team champions. Renee Young manages to catch an interview with him after the match. She asks, how it feels to be the new tag team champions. Hunakara says it feels incredible. They've just beaten the longest reigning tag team champions in NXT history. And Kalisto says they are the Lucha Dragons, which is their new tag team name. I'm not going to call them the Lucha Dragons. I'm going to call them KalistiCara, because it sounds better. and he says the future starts tonight. Yeah, it's just a little sort of promo from the two to sort of, introduce themselves as the champions and to sort of put over their new name. I'm looking forward to what they do and where they go. I'd say they're just going to be so exciting to watch over the next however long it's going to be. CJ Parker's out next, and I sort of marked out a little bit. I like CJ Parker, as everybody knows. Really good entrance music, he's working the character well. And then I marked out even more when I found out his opponent was Baron Corbin, a guy that I've been wanting to sort of get some sort of push for a long, long time now. The guy's just got so much potential. The only thing that worries me about him is his age. He's 30 years old. He had a birthday this week. But, if he can just sort of be sort of not fast-tracked up the roster, but progress well, as I say, he's got a lot of potential. He's got a bit of basic background, or sort of, the basic fundamentals of wrestling there already. And squashing CJ Parker here has probably helped him a little bit. I'm not a fan of squash matches, as you all know. Previously talking about the Ascension, but the squash match to put somebody over in their first main match in NXT, not got a problem with that at all. Lasted about 30 seconds in all fairness, and he hit what looked like the Sister Abigail, but it was more intense, more vicious. What was sort of really cool about it was that CJ, his feet didn't touch the floor at one point during the move. He had an arm round the neck and onto the shoulder or onto the opposite shoulder of Baron, and he whipped him back really aggressively, and it was brilliant to see. I loved it. I thought it was really good. And he actually got a thank you Baron or a thank you Corbin chant after the match. I forget which one it was now, but brilliant. Really good way to introduce the guy. They billed it as his debut. Obviously it's not, but they did that with Paul Dempsey as well a little while ago. So unfortunately, WWE likes to build things like that. Hair versus Hair is up next. Enzo Amore with Big Cass versus Sly with Marcus Louis in his corner. Brilliant mic work as always before the match between Enzo and Big Cass. It reminded me a lot of the What chants when Enzo was running through all the different hairstyles that he could give to Sly. Cass, after the first 2 or 3, was saying, "How you doing?" as he does. And after that, the crowd sort of picked it up, and he didn't have to say it anymore. He was just holding the mic up for the crowd to say it, and it really worked well. And it reminded me, as I say, a lot of Austin in the Attitude Era with the What chants. Not like what people do now when they just can't be fucked to listen to somebody on the mic when they chant What for just whatever reason they feel like it. This was a proper What chant working as it should have. When Austin used to reel off a list of things that he'd done throughout his day or whatever, and the crowd would go, "What?" But instead here it was, "How you doing?" But no, it worked really well. The match itself was decent. It told a decent little story. Probably only lasted 6 minutes or so. Marcus Louis tried to get involved at one point, but that was sort of thwarted by Cass, who took him down with a big clothesline. Enzo ended up winning with a roll up. He had a little assistance though because he grabbed the tights of Sly. Obviously Enzo and Cass celebrated after the match, and Sylvester realised, "Oh shit, I'm getting a fucking haircut now." So he tries to run away. And Enzo follows him out one way. Cass goes out towards the ramp. Enzo chases him around, a bit of cat and mouse and wallop. Massive clothesline from Cass. And he picks him up onto his shoulders into like a body slam position. Walks him up the ramp, and all the way up the ramp, Enzo's talking shit to him, talking smack. It's brilliant because Enzo's probably the master of that in NXT, in all fairness to him. They get sort of halfway up the ramp, and Marcus Louis comes out, and he wallops Cass from behind, knocks Sylvester off of his shoulders into Enzo. They all fall down in a heap. Legionnaires get to their feet first, and they're sort of like, yeah, we managed to escape it kind of thing, which they haven't because Enzo and Cass make it back to their feet, and Sly realises that, and he runs off. Marcus Louis has got his back to Cass and Enzo. He's like, "Well, where are you going? What's going on?" So anyway, Cass and Zoe take out Marcus, drag him up the ramp, talk a bit more smack to him as they like to do, and Zoe throws Marcus into a big boot of Cass, and somebody's about to become bald. Cass, they've got the bucket that they had from last week when they were in the hair salon, and Cass pushes Enzo, and we have a proper Dudley Boys moment. It's brilliant. Cass pushes Enzo, and he goes, "Enzo, get the bucket!" And it's brilliant because the crowd popped for it, obviously because they knew what it was all about. You know, from the Devon get the tables, Enzo get the bucket. So Enzo grabs the bucket, he talks a bit more smack, and he just drops it onto Marcus Louis' head. Marcus runs out, and Cass and Enzo are just sort of there celebrating the win, celebrating the fact that Marcus Louis' hair is going to end up, well, I suppose, dissolving from the formula that they've chucked on his head. But we've got a bit more on this later on. The debut of KENTA is up next. William Regal's out to introduce him. It was supposed to be Ric Flair, but for whatever reason he wasn't present at the show. But William Regal's out. There was a big William Regal chant actually, which was really cool to see because Regal sort of took it quite humbly. You could tell that he appreciated it, but he was quite humble at the same time because he just sort of looked down at the canvas and shook his head as if to say, you know, wow, that's quite cool. But, you know, everybody in the wrestling industry respects William Regal for what he's done, what he's now doing, helping out the younger guys, passing on his knowledge and sort of training these guys. But Regal calls it probably the biggest international signing in the history of WWE. I would say certainly in recent times, but not necessarily of all time. You know, obviously we've had a lot of international guys over the years, and it all depends as well on how much they're going to push KENTA. You know, is he just going to have a career like Tajiri, or is he going to have a career like, say, a Shawn Michaels? Obviously, Shawn Michaels being American. But, you know, is he just going to sort of, you know, is he going to have like a US title reign, or is he going to be a 3-time, 4-time world champion? Obviously, it remains to be seen, but we'll, you know, we will see where it all goes. I'm not too sure on how old KENTA is and how long he's got to achieve what everybody wants him to achieve, but you know, hopefully he gets fast tracked up to the main roster. I don't expect him to spend too much time in NXT because everybody wants to see him working with the big guys on Raw and on SmackDown. So we'll see. He introduces like a small video package from when Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart were signing him in Japan. Excuse me. And after the video, he welcomes KENTA to the ring, gives him the mic. He welcomes him, gives him the mic. KENTA thanks Regal, and he thanks the NXT fans. But then afterwards, for a few minutes, he spoke in Japanese. I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know what the hell he's talking about. But afterwards, he says it's a dream come true, and he's happy to be in the WWE and on NXT. And then he reveals his new ring name, which is Hideo Itami. He says his goal is to become the NXT championship. The NXT champion. We then have an interruption from the Ascension. They quickly sort of eject Hideo Itami from the ring, and they demand a rematch from William Regal. They're saying they're pissed off, basically. They want a rematch. Hideo Itami comes back into the ring, hits Connor with a Connor tries to hit him with a clothesline. He ducks it, and he hits Victor with a big boot, knocking him out of the ring, and then he quickly gets rid of Conor O'Brien as well. Both members of the Ascension are outside the ring. They're sort of teasing coming back in, but Hideo Itami grabs a chair, sits down on it in the ring, as if to say, "Come on now, come and get it. If you want some, come and get some," kind of thing. Like, you know, scratch that. That's a John Cena saying. But you get the point, you know. He's sort of saying, you know, if you want a fight, I'll give you a fight. You know, the Ascension sort of retreated up the ramp, and obviously that's going to be their next big feud. They'll probably get a rematch with KalistiCara, but this is going to be their next feud. I'd like to see KENTA or Hideo Itami get a tag team partner. Who that's going to be, I don't know. If he does have one, that is, obviously. But in any case, it's great to see him in NXT. You know, I quite like the new name as well. I'm never really too keen on the new names that they give him, but Hideo Itami, it kind of works quite well. He did say it was dedicated to one of his heroes, but I did a little bit of research on the internet and I couldn't find anybody called Hideo Itami. But I didn't do like any extensive research as such. So if anybody knows any more than that than what I do, feel free to let me know. But I'm looking forward to his feud with the Ascension, you know, seeing where he goes with that. Bullshit Dempsey versus Mojo fucking Rawley's up next. It was a fight and it probably lasted about a minute or so. Bull won with a flying headbutt, believe it or not, a la Chris Benoit. Not Dynamite Kid, sorry. Daniel Bryan. Post-match, Bull hit another one, just sort of like a statement of intent more than anything. I did notice that Mojo had a cut under his left eye. How he got that, I have no idea. But I don't know if that was why the match was cut so short. As I said, it was only about a minute or so long. Quite aggressive as well, actually, to be fair. But I was thinking it's either going to be a train wreck or it's going to be a really good fight. It was neither, and it was a shame really because it had a bit of potential about it. If because like Mojo was quite vicious as well, which was good to see. But it was I wouldn't call it a blemish because for what it was good. But it could have lasted longer, and as I said, I'm not sure if that was because of the cut that Mojo had under his eye. It looked quite nasty, but who knows? I'm expecting we'll see a rematch, which I would like to see Mojo win. I can't believe I just said that, but I'd like to see Mojo win the rematch and get like a proper feud out of it. You know, end with a rubber match. But if they do have that rubber match, that's got a main event NXT in my opinion. But we'll see where they go with it. And now's the follow-up to the Enzo, Cass, and the Legionnaires moment from earlier on. Basically, Cass and Enzo are walking around outside the building, well, just sort of to the side of the building. Zoe basically says, you know, I want to find Marcus Louis because I want to see if he's bold or not. What's on earth his creams work? And he said to Cass, he goes, it's like that Sasquatch that you told me about. I've got to see it to believe it. And they walk past this doorway where they see Sly and Marcus. Marcus has got a towel over his head. And Sylvester spots them, runs away. But unfortunately for Marcus Louis, he wasn't so lucky. He gets a whack to the gut. Cass hoiks him up on his shoulder. Walks through this door which brings them into the arena itself. They sort of drop him into the ring. And Cass hits an atomic drop, or an inverted atomic drop rather, to Marcus. He's sort of crouched over holding, you know, the crown jewels because he's just had a knee drop to him. Excuse me. Enzo's sort of shaping up. He's like swinging his arm around as if he's going to punch him. He's going, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? I thought he was going to have a fit or something, but as it looks like he's about to hit him, his hand stops just in front of Marcus's face and he pulls a towel off his head. Bald. He's got patches of hair all over his head. You can tell it's been shaved. Obviously, this cream isn't, you know, it's not what it's supposed to be, but you can tell his hair's been shaved. But it was brilliant, and he just sort of looked horrified. He really did, and the crowd loved it. They ate it up. They thought it was brilliant. But Marcus runs out of the ring. Zoe gets on the mic and he says, he tells Marcus that he has a new word to describe him. B-A-W-L-D. Bald. And that was my awful New York accent once again, or New Jersey, or wherever the hell these guys are from. Definitely for me though, this, the match itself, from like the beginning of the match with the mic work to the throwing the bucket onto Marcus's head and like the unveiling of the bald head of Marcus Louis, definitely for me is a top 5 moment for NXT. I thought that was absolutely brilliantly done. It reminded me a lot of the Kurt Angle one from 2002, where he had his hair shaved by Edge, like sort of trying to find him backstage. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant segment, and hats off to all 4 guys. They pulled it off brilliantly, I thought. So hopefully it's to get these guys a bit of exposure now. You know, Cass is a talented guy. We've seen more of him than what we've seen of the other 3. Enzo worked well in the match. Sly worked well in the match. Marcus Louis, he was quite impressive last week against Sami Zayn as well. So hopefully this will get these guys enough exposure to sort of move their careers on a little bit. And you never know where we'll see them in, say, 6 months' time. I'd like to see NXT Tag Team Championship reign for Enzo and Cass, but whether that happens or not, I don't know. I think they'd be brilliant as tag team champions because they've got that natural charisma about them, both in the ring and on the mic, and they got a bit of presence about them as well. So the next match was one of the 2 main events. It was Charlotte versus Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship, and there was a great video package leading up to it where you can see a lot of raw emotion from Bayley. You know, at one point she broke down into tears in that promo, and it was brilliant. It really was. She got new entrance music as well. Not really my kind of thing. Typical like modern day girly pop music, kind of thing that your 10-year-old sister would listen to, I suppose. She had streamers on her arms though, and it reminded me a lot of Ricky Steamboat when he had the dragon wings. And I thought that was really good actually because it just added another dimension to the character of Bayley. But you know, fair play. You know, she's worked hard over the last 6 months and she's deserved her championship opportunity on the show. The highlight of the match was actually came from Charlotte. She locked in the figure 4 headlock, and what she did was she rolled forward and took Bayley with her, but she didn't do it once, she did it 3 times, and it just showed really good athleticism from Charlotte, and from Bayley as well, really. But that was just, you look at it and it looked quite basic, but I thought it was really impressive to be able to sort of shift that weight over 3 times in succession. I thought was really good. The end of the match came about when Charlotte, she avoided what could have been like some sort of like German suplex, I suppose. She sort of switched it and she went to roll up Bayley, but instead of rolling her up, her head snapped back off the bottom turnbuckle. I've seen that in Ring of Honor recently. I can't remember the match. It was between Tommaso Ciampa and somebody else. I can't remember who it was now. But Bayley, her head snapped back off the bottom rope, and Charlotte went up top and she hit one of the sloppiest moonsaults I've ever seen. She didn't even hit her. Her arms landed over her. Her body landed over her and her legs hit the canvas. Just, no. Very sloppy, but Bayley kicked out, which if she'd have been pinned by that, I'd have been pretty pissed off. She looked up at Charlotte, she had a real look of defiance in her face, like, that's not going to beat me, you're not going to beat me. And Charlotte hit the somersault cutter, which is now called Natural Selection, for the win. You know, Charlotte retained the title. She does, you know, she celebrates in the ring for a moment. She walks back up the ramp. And Sasha Banks makes an appearance. She walks past Charlotte at the top on the ramp. Comes into the ring, starts trash talking Bayley, and starts beating the crap out of her. Charlotte obviously sees what's going on the big screen. She don't like it. She comes back into the ring to make the save. Fair play, obviously. Bayley's earned Charlotte's respect. It was a really good match, to be honest. It actually got a "This is awesome" chant, which you don't really get too much in Divas matches or women's matches in the WWE. So, fair play to the two of them. Not as good as the match that Charlotte had with Natalya at the first TakeOver, but still a really enjoyable match, I thought. Main event time, championship match between Adrian, Neville, Sami Zayn, Tyler Breeze and Tyson Kidd. There was no promo video, but what they had all throughout the show was the interviews from last week. And then they added little snippets into it of like interviews with other guys, like Seth Rollins talking about Sami Zayn, same with Daniel Bryan talking about Sami Zayn. They had all sorts of different bits and bobs going on. I thought, you know, instead of having like a main promo video, that worked just as well, I thought. And it was a fantastic match. It really was. I'm not a fan of Fatal 4-Ways. I prefer them as elimination matches. But this is easily a contender for the match of the year, you know. It was just non-stop action throughout. And it was one of those matches where I was on my seat throughout the entire match. You know, you couldn't pick a winner until the end of the match happened. You know, it could have gone any way, really. You know, Tyson Kidd controlled a lot of the match. Tyler Breeze had his moments, Sami Zayn had his moments, Adrian Neville had his moments, but any four of them could have won it really. My favourite part was, because it's hard to pinpoint the highlight, so I'll go with my favourite part. Was when Sami was looking to hit Tyson up in the corner, and he was looking to hit a haluva kick, and as he ran, Tyler Breeze just fucking came out of nowhere and he hit him with the beauty shot. Tyson Kidd sort of stumbled into the centre of the ring, bam, supermodel kick, and then just as he hit him with that, Neville came off of the top rope and he hit him with a drop kick, and it was, all three were just so smooth, and there was no hesitation in anything, like looking around for anybody. He knew where everybody was coming from, and it was brilliant. So fair play to Tyler Breeze. I talk him up a lot, but it was just executed perfectly. It was a brilliant moment in the match, I thought. And it's not just Tyler Breeze, all three guys, to get all their timing right to help Breeze with that moment. It was fantastic, I thought, really. But the end of the match came about. Sami went on a bit of a rampage. He had Tyson up in the corner again, looking to hit the haluva kick, with Neville and Breeze both on the outside of the ring. And Neville was on the, just sort of down outside the ring in the corner that Tyson Kidd was in. Sami ran, and it looked for all the money in the world that he was going to hit the haluva kick on Tyson. He didn't. He sort of diverted right at the last second, and he hit a suicide dive too onto Adrian Neville and knocked him over the barrier into the crowd. He then, he started to feel it a little bit, and then he hit Tyler Breeze with the DDT that he hit to Cesaro on NXT last year during their, quote unquote match of the year. Wasn't quite as smooth as the one that he hit to Cesaro, but it was still really, it was a really good spot in the match. He got back into the ring, he hit Tyson with the haluva kick, and surely new NXT champion. Unfortunately not. As Sean Bennett, the referee's hands coming down for 3, Adrian Neville pulled him out of the ring. And obviously, Sami Zayn sort of he doesn't know what's going on really. He's oblivious to what's happened. And he's looking outside of the ring, pointing at Sean Bennett, what are you doing out there? What are you doing? And Neville's just looking at him just saying, how dare you trying to take my title? You're supposed to be my friend. And he looked quite betrayed by it, which it was really good. Just, if looks could kill, Sami Zayn would be pushing up daisies, to be honest with you, because it was just one of those moments where you thought, is Neville going to turn heel? And what I expected to happen was for Devitt and Steen to come out and help Neville sort of take out Sami Zayn. Obviously, from the Ring of Honor days, Sami Zayn and Kevin Steen have got a lot of history as enemies, really, I suppose. But that didn't happen. Sami went outside to sort of take care of Neville, but as he hit the floor, he got hit with a super kick. Neville went up top, hit the red arrow to Tyson Kidd. 1, 2, 3. Neville retains, and it's just looking more and more likely that he could turn heel. Really, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because if he does turn heel, you don't want him using the red arrow because it's a popular finishing move. So you'd have to find a new finishing move for Adrian Neville. I mean, he's resourceful enough to think of one, or to come up with one, but he just screams babyface, doesn't he? But that moment where he looked at Zayn looking really betrayed, thinking, how dare you trying to take my title? It was just a perfect heel look. It really was. But Zayn's quest to become NXT champion continues. Neville's still the champion. Where this leaves Kidd and Breeze, I'm not sure, but it looks like we're building up to a feud between, or not necessarily a feud, but a match between Zayn and Neville, which, as I like to say, take my damn money, because the match that those two could have would just be phenomenal. Really would be. The overall rating of the show, I've given it a 9 out of 10. And I was trying to go higher as well, but I couldn't, simply for the shortness of the match between Mojo and Bull Dempsey, and the squash that CJ Parker took from Baron Corbin. Excuse me. And there was one moment actually in the Bayley and Charlotte match that really pissed me off, because it was a basic fundamental of wrestling. When you're pinning somebody, Charlotte, get your feet from out from underneath the rope and inside the ring. And Drake Younger was refereeing that match. Excuse me. And he didn't spot it. He was quite blind to it, I suppose, but he noticed when he got back up to his feet that Charlotte's foot was under the rope. He said, "Look, come on, get your foot out from under the rope." But the show, it was. If you're talking perfection, it was as close to it as you're going to get without being perfect. It really worked brilliantly, I thought. So we look forward to next week's NXT and see what comes next for it all, really, for the show. The news this week, I'll start with the sad note. Former WWE wrestler Sean O'Hare passed away. It was an unfortunate suicide. That was on Tuesday night, I believe. It might have been Monday night, but I read about it on Wednesday. He was 43 years old. He worked, I only really remember him from around 2003 when he was in the WWE, and he was teamed with Roddy Piper initially in a feud against Rikishi, and I don't think he really did too much after that, but obviously it's never nice to hear about these kinds of things. He was a WCW Tag Team Champion as well, on 3 occasions, I think it was, with I think it was once with Mark Jindrak and twice with Chuck Palumbo. It might be the other way around, I don't remember. But never nice to hear when anybody dies, really, and obviously it's the nature of the business that wrestling is. He was battling with depression, and whether it was the fact that he just had enough or what, I'm not sure, but I'd say never nice to hear about. The other news on a much lighter note was the fact that the NXT guys got a chance to shine on the main roster this week. There was a tag team match on Raw between between Neville and Zayn versus Breeze and Kid. I haven't seen the match. I've seen the last couple of minutes on WWE.com, but I've not seen the match itself, so I'm going to have to try and find that. But it's good to see that they got that exposure. And then the following night on main event, the Ascension had a squash over Los Matadors. Excuse me a second. They had a squash over Los Matadors. Obviously, again, just to promote TakeOver. Good, as I say, good to get the exposure for these guys, and I expect Connor and Victor to be up on the main roster sooner rather than later. Whether anybody from that Raw match moves up to the main roster, obviously Tyson Kidd essentially is a main roster guy, but whether anybody else moves up in the near future, I can't see Tyler Breeze moving up anytime soon, or Sami Zayn for that matter, but Adrian Neville maybe, because the crowd really loved that red arrow that he hit. And there was a guy who was just looking like he's eyes wide open, mouth wide open. You think Ellison Big, the shocked Undertaker guy. It was like that. He had his hands on his head and he was like, "Oh my God, what was that?" Brilliant. Birthdays this week. September the 8th, Raven turned 50. September the 9th, Trevor Murdoch turned 34. Excuse me. September the 10th, rather. Don Morocco, 65. Steve Kern, 63. Mike DiBiase, 37. Matt Morgan, 36. And Drake Younger, 30. Quite a lot then. September the 11th, Paul Heyman, 49. September the 12th, Road Warrior Hulk would have turned 57. September the 13th, Baron Corbin turned 30. And September the 16th, Mad Dog Vachon would have turned 85. I was sort of debating whether or not to do the Grappling Greats this week, obviously because of TakeOver, and obviously the review for that would have been longer, but fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. Martin Farmer Burns, as promised last week. Born on February the 15th, 1861 in Cheddar County, Iowa. Wrestled his first pro wrestling match at the age of 19 against David Graft, and they wrestled to a 2-hour and 19-minute draw. In 1886, he lost a match to Henry Clayton, and it annoyed him because he was unable to avoid Clayton's stranglehold. The hold that eventually gave Clayton the moniker of Evan the Strangler Lewis. Not Ed the Strangler Lewis, Evan the Strangler Lewis. And it pissed him off so much, basically, that he worked on his neck strength and neck conditioning and muscle mass around his neck, and he ended up having a 20-inch neck. and what he would do is he would like drop himself to test his neck strength, and he could drop himself from like 6 feet, and it would have little to no effect on his neck. In 1889, he came across a sign which offered a $25 reward to anybody who could last 15 minutes against Jack Carleek and Evan the Strangler Lewis. That was in, I'm not sure if it was in Chicago or just in Illinois, somewhere else in Illinois, but it was in the state of Illinois. Burns turned up. He turned up in his farmer's clothing that he would wear. He was a farmer by trade, and he was announced as Farmer Burns for the first time. Made quick work of Jack Carleek, who himself was a very good wrestler back in the day. And then he lasted 15 minutes against the Strangler, but Burns was named the winner, and the following day he was basically known as a local hero in the papers. The highlight of his career came on April the 20th, 1895. He defeated Evan the Strangler Lewis, which in what was essentially the rubber match between the two guys. It was for the American Heavyweight Championship, which he held for 2 years. His legacy is probably more so for his days as a trainer. He trained personally, by all accounts, up to more than 1,600 wrestlers. Guys like Frank Gotch, Earl Craddock, both world heavyweight champions, Rudy Dusek and Jack Sherry, and he was also recruited to work as the conditioning coach for boxer Jim Jeffries for his 1910 championship match with Jack Johnson. He had 2 sons, Raymond and Charlie, and a daughter named Mame. And his wife Amelia died in 1930, and his daughter Mame passed away in 1932. He passed away himself 5 years later in 1937 at the age of 75, and was buried in St. James's Cemetery in Toronto, Iowa. So there you go, a little bit of a background on Martin Farmer Burns. Not too sure I'm going to do next week. I was thinking maybe Pat O'Connor or Buddy Rogers. Just moving on from the guy I did last week, Lou Thez. It was basically a toss-up last week. Did I go back to Martin Farmer Burns, or did I do Lou Thez? I put the question to somebody and they came back and said, no, do Lou Thez. So next week I'll be back up to, I'd say I'll probably either do Buddy Rogers or Pat O'Connor. I'm not decided yet. So you'll find out next week. That's the end of the show. As always, make sure you look out for me on Twitter at Axel Mulligan, and check out the Twitter page for Axel's Analysis at Axel's Analysis. Make sure you check out the Facebook page as well at Axel's Analysis. Shoutouts as always, Tim Vicious at Tim _Vicious. Look out for Vicious Rants on YouTube, where Tim reviews Raws and pay-per-views. Sunday Segway Podcast at Sunday Segway on Twitter and Sunday Segway on Facebook. Make sure you review the shows. That always put statuses up on the Facebook page. Just sort of leave your comments for the shows. You can listen to the Sunday Segway Podcast on YouTube, Podomatic, and iTunes, and Stitcher Radio as well. If you listen to it on iTunes, make sure you give it a rating to bump them up the charts a little bit. At James Powers 33, make sure you check out James's Wrestling Ramble on YouTube, Podomatic, and Mixcloud. James basically does what Tim does and what Sunday Segway does, reviews Raws and pay-per-views, etc. Excuse me. Also check out at PW Smart Talk on Twitter and PW Smart Pro Wrestling Smart Talk on Facebook. Wrestling Rambles on Twitter at Wrestling Rambles and WrestlingRambles.com to check out a load of great blogs. Last but not least, as always, Tony Walker at Tony_Walker. Check out the Wrestling Matters podcast on YouTube, Podomatic, and iTunes. And again, if you listen to the Wrestling Matters podcast on iTunes, make sure you give it a rating just to bump Tony up the charts a bit. And that's the end of the show. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next week.